Radar Update. My name is Daniel Vallis and welcome to our channel. We're at a very important time right now, a time where we remember how Christ was offered to bear the sins of many. This is a time of remembrance where we remember what He did for us, the historical events, but also the significance of what was done when the Lamb of God came. And He wants us to remember what happened, what He did for us. He wants us to remember this by the Lord's Supper. And by doing this, we are demonstrating in a visual form. That's what the word show means. It means a presentation. We are presenting, we are demonstrating, we are showing the Lord's death till He comes. And so we're at an important time right now on the calendar when these events historically took place, when Christ was offered to bear the sins of many, and the same time He gave the instructions for the remembrance of Him, the Lord's Supper. So this is a very important time, and it's all done in context to remember that He's coming again. And this is the same emphasis that Paul reminded us. We're looking for Him to appear the second time. And that reminds us and causes us to dig deeper into understanding what happened the first time Christ came around His death when He was offered to bear the sins of many. And so this is a time right now, these days where we're at right now, a time of remembrance. Looking back at what Christ did, but also in light that He is coming again. And so when we just review where we are on the radar, we're at an important time because it's a time spread out over several days that encapsulates when Christ was offered to bear the sins of many. And we talked about how He came on the 10th day of the Hebrew month when the King was announced, the King cometh, and that's when the Lamb was presented for the upcoming Passover sacrifice. So between the 10th and the 14th, that dealt with the actual Passover sacrifice when Christ was offered. And the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper, was on the night portion of the 14th. And then the rest of the crucifixion events followed after that. And Jesus died about the 9th hour, which is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when the veil was rent, the graves were opened. And then between that time and the evening, when the sun set, they would be getting Christ's body ready for burial. They were trying to bury it before the sun set because that would mark the start of the 15th day, which was also a high Sabbath too, being the start of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So Christ was buried on the 14th, but is at the very end of it. Then He was in the grave, and He rose on the third day. In the third day is when He rose, and that's when He said He would be rising, on the third day. He rose from the dead in the night portion of the 17th day, and then toward the morning is when He met with Mary and the others. And you remember when He talked with her, He said that at that point He had not yet ascended to the Father. He had not gone into the heavenlies at that point in the morning yet, which would be where He would finish out the Day of Atonement pictures as our high priest. That's what He was about to do when He was talking with them in the morning. So it is connected to the offering that took place and to Christ when He died on the cross, to His death, and also His resurrection. That also deals with His death. So with the Lord's Supper, we remember not just the crucifixion, but we remember the burial and the resurrection. So He ascended to the Father sometime in the morning of the 17th, and then around lunchtime, apparently, He met up with the 2 disciples who were heading to Emmaus. And Emmaus is just under 7 miles away from Jerusalem, and it'd take them about 2 to 3 hours to walk that distance. And it was during that time that Jesus rehearsed to them the prophecies about how He would come. And then when they got to where they were going in Emmaus, they sat down for a evening meal. Apparently the sun had not set yet, but that's when He revealed Himself to them. He disappeared, and then the disciples went back to Jerusalem real quick, found the other disciples, and that's when Jesus appeared to all of them, except for Thomas, right there in the upper room, which was probably right at the beginning of the 18th, but it's very late on the 17th for sure. So this is what we have on the radar right now. When we consider this is a time across these multiple days here that deal with the offering, the presentation of the Lamb, the death of the Lamb, the burial, and the resurrection. It all deals with His death. And this is what we are told to remember, and especially in light that He is coming again. And we are to look for Him to appear a second time. So this is a very important 7 days here, dealing with the death of Christ. Something He wants us to remember till He comes again. And we had talked about how the enemy knows this time is very important. They've been pointing to this time, reminders of the exact same promises that Jesus gave at this historic time too. They are expecting Him to arrive, to appear a second time, and they know it's going to be related to the first time that He came. And we've talked about Daniel's 7 weeks prophecy pointing to this time, when the historic decree went forth to rebuild Jerusalem. That brought us to the middle of the 14th day, pretty much. And the enemy events were also pointing squarely to this day, too. But one thing that's different in our time with Daniel's 7-week prophecy is that it is not a prescribed to-the-day fulfillment like it was the first time Christ came. Remember, when Christ came the first time, when he entered Jerusalem on the 10th, he fulfilled it to the day. And that was the initial prophecy, that the Messiah, the Prince, was coming to the day. And the amount of time was given him. And he did fulfill that to the very day. And he told him he did. But for us, we see it merely as a parallel. It is not necessarily something prescribed to this time, although we can see the parallels because we are told to look for him to appear a second time. So we see a parallel with it. It is important. It does point to this time. But the same instructions that Jesus gave during this time also told us it will not be fulfilled to the day. Remember, he gave his disciples multiple reminders. You will not know the day or hour. Even the angels in heaven won't know the day or hour. You won't be able to do any special math. You won't even be able to look back at math that had already been fulfilled hours before Jesus was giving them these instructions. So we gotta keep that in mind too. We can look at it as a parallel and a reminder that points to this time. It can tell us a time to be looking with high expectation, but we also have to keep in mind he has foretold us that there is going to be an ambiguity, possibly even up to several days, around this window, a time when we are to watch. We will have an indicator and multiple things that will tell us when to watch. We will know when to watch, but we gotta keep in mind it's a time when we are looking for him to appear the second time. And that goes back to the example that he gave his disciples in Luke 12:34. He told us he wants to find us with our loins girded about and our lights burning, a state of readiness where we are already expecting him. And he uses the illustration of servants who are waiting for their master who is going off to a wedding. And that's a type of event where the master would be expected probably to be carried over pretty late. Those type of events, you typically get invited to stay over after the events are done, have a cup of coffee, spend some time talking, and so by the time you get out of there, it's pretty late, and so it's hard to tell people ahead of time what time you'll be coming back, although you will have a very good idea when you'll be coming back, but not down to the hour. And with those type of events, it was not unthought of also to be invited to stay the night too, because you're friends of the family, you were invited to stay, and especially if you stay up late. And so he uses this as an example for the servants knowing you will know a time to be watching, a time to expect your Lord, but you will not know the day or hour, just that it's going to be right around there. You're going to have a very good idea of when it is, but there is going to be a degree of ambiguity. That's why you need to be ready ahead of time, because you don't know exactly when the master is going to be pulling into the driveway. He does want us to be watching, and he does say there is a special blessing for the servants who are watching for him, and who already they're living as though they are expecting their master to show up. And he wants us to be like that because there is a blessing for those servants. The servants who are not making themselves ready and who are not watching for their Lord, they're going to be caught by surprise, and they're going to find out that they have been robbed. They have been robbed of blessings and rewards, and they'll realize that when it's too late to fix it. This is why he wants us to be ready ahead of time, and to be looking for him and expecting him, because we don't know exactly the hour when he's showing up, but we will have a very good idea, and he does want us to watch. So we can consider this Daniel 7-week prophecy as a very strong parallel, because it does fit in with the time that Christ came the first time, and we are looking for him the second time. So it is something that we should definitely be considering at this time, but keep in mind his instructions that he gave at this time, that we will know it points us to this time, but not to a day or an hour. And particularly when we review his instructions, he wants us to remember his death, how he was offered to bear the sins of many, how he came the first time. And that spreads out over several days. It spreads out over a week's time here. So we have strong things from the first time that point right to this time, a time that we should be watching, making ourselves ready, and making sure we are shining bright, expecting our master to show up. The very first day in the sequence on the 10th, that's when he was presented. That's when it was announced the King cometh. All the way up through the 17th is when he finished it. That's when he entered into the heavenlies and he finished the role of the high priest. So it spans 7 days. And this is what we got to remember with Hebrews 9. For Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. And we know that Jesus ascended to the Father on the 17th, on the day he rose from the dead. So this is part of what we should be remembering. nor yet that he should offer himself often, as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others. For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world. But now once in the end of the world hath he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this is judgment, so Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. So as we look for him to appear the second time, we have to keep in mind it encompasses the whole time period of when he was offered, from the presentation to the actual sacrifice and the crucifixion time, to the burial, the resurrection, and when he as high priest went into the heavenlies and offered his blood on our behalf. So it encompasses 7 days. And this is a time when we need to be remembering what he did the first time, and that will guide us as we watch for our Lord, our Master, to appear the second time. So here where we are, so much telling us to expect our Redeemer. We don't know the day or hour, but we see a powerful window right here that reminds us of everything that he wants us to remember, and to remember it till he comes. And so we're here at a high time, expecting him, looking for him, and watching for him to appear the second time. This do ye as oft as ye drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Lord's death till he come. This is what we should be doing right now, remembering him and what he has done for us, and how he was offered to bear the sins of many. This is a time of historical remembrances, but also a time of reflection of what our Redeemer has done for us, and that we are expecting him and looking for him. We know our redemption is nigh, even at the doors. This is our hope. This is our expectation. We are looking for him to appear the second time. So as wise and faithful servants, we will gird up our loins, we will make ourselves ready, we will rise up, we will trim our lamps, and we will shine bright, expecting our Master, our Redeemer, our Beloved, our Bridegroom. And we will go forth out to meet him, loving him and serving him, first and highest above all else. Maranatha!